Cat Black here. Is drug addiction worth going to war over? Just heard about a record-breaking counterfeit fentanyl pill bust in Colorado against the backdrop of suspected Venezuelan drug boats being vaporized by the U.S. military. And I see outcry and pushback about these efforts, and I have to ask, is drug addiction worth going to war over? The main reason why I even got into safety advocacy was in response to what crack cocaine was doing to my old neighborhood and the national black community. You know, when you destroy people's productivity and their autonomy, and then by extension, their safety, by turning folks either into literal zombies or dealers and the zombie makers who, A, don't care anything about people who look like them when they sell them this stuff, and then often will use people as human targets in gun battles with rivals. Now, it was okay when it was just happening to black folks in the inner city. I saw that firsthand from the 1980s forward. It seems to be okay up until the second Trump administration that a lot of white folks were now becoming zombified, if you will, from fentanyl, which is probably the most effective slow motion destruction of human productivity I've ever seen. But now that the border is closed and offensive operations are being planned and or enacted against drug trafficking organizations and their state sponsors in this hemisphere, you know, some folks are feeling some type of way about it. You know, I take no pleasure in seeing white millennials and Gen Zers acting like the black crackheads of the 80s and 90s. You know, watching people being robbed of any hope, even in this inflationary crony capitalist economy, of being self-sustaining and self-respecting. I don't get off on that. And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that if distant Arab, African, Asian, and European Islamists were pumping fentanyl into this country, the way, I guess, presumably Christian, Latino cartels are, this country would be waging full-scale war. I mean, consider the drug death rate exceeds September 11th, and every casualty from the global war on terror. And they exceed those numbers every year. You don't have to be a Trumper or MAGA to say that if you're killing tens of thousands of U.S. citizens, you are a national security threat. That should be a conclusion that one need not be a member of any particular ideology or political party to arrive at. As I do my outreach, and I give food out when I have it to give, it is overwhelmingly to people who have been crippled by drugs that have been brought here from elsewhere, outside of the borders of this country. And it's just so sad to see people in their so-called prime years, late teens, 20s, 30s, who can really do nothing more than maybe beg, borrow, or steal for the next hit and perhaps eat somewhere in this twilight cycle of chasing the next hit. That's all life becomes. You know, where do I get my next smoke or injection of fentanyl or fentanyl-laced substances? Now, to me, as an old school brother, I think that's worth going to war over. Unless you're saying that because someone becomes a drug addict, that they are not worthy of being avenged. And I think a lot of people feel that way. Less do, to be candid, once the face of drug addiction became young and white and often from middle class households. You should listen to the backstory of a lot of these folks you see sitting on the sidewalk or huddled outside of supermarkets or coffee shops. You would be very surprised. So the country's got to decide. Are drug addicts worth going to war over, or do you consider them expendable just like the dealers do? Peace.